Is an air fryer just a convection oven? Scientifically, yes, but there is more to it than that, so today we're going to put the two to the test. Air fryers have become very popular over the past several years for getting crispy food without the use of excess oil. I've been interested in the practical application of air fryers, namely, what does it do well, what does it do not so well, and should you consider adding one as an appliance to your kitchen arsenal? Air fryers work by convection, which is the heat transfer by mass motion of a fluid, such as air or water. Basically, hot air is constantly circulated around the food, which eliminates cool spots, cooks food faster, and allows the Maillard or browning reaction to occur. This is what leads us to crispy and delicious food that we know and love. Convection ovens work the same way on a bigger scale, as larger fans are going to circulate the air around the oven. So yes, an air fryer is a convection heat source, just like the oven with a convection setting. But there's two questions that I want to answer today. Number one is, does an air fryer cook food faster than a convection oven? Number two, does an air fryer make food crispier than a convection oven? Today we have three food items: homemade chicken bites, some roasted vegetables, and everyone's favorite potato wedges. These are going to be tested across two different experiments. Number one is cooking the food items at the same temperature and the same amount of time. Then number two is cooking at the same temperature and to the same doneness. Once the foods are done cooking, we are going to answer these questions based on the texture. Number one, how crispy is it by hand feel, scale 1 through 5? Number two, how crispy is it by mouthfeel, scale 1 through 5? And number three, visually, how golden brown and crispy does it look, scale 1 through 5? The taste tester will be blindfolded and presented both options, then we will switch places and do the same. Before we dive right into the experiments though, I do want to talk about how food gets crispy in the first place and some general rules that you can incorporate regardless of your cooking method. Getting food crispy is basically a dehydration process. Free water evaporates from the food, being converted to steam at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. With most of the free water evaporated, the Maillard or browning reaction will take place rapidly at these high temperatures. This is what gives our food that golden brown and crispy texture we love. Given that information, here are some basic guidelines that you can incorporate to make your foods crisp better. Number one, drier is better. Since we need the free water to evaporate, the faster that happens, the faster browning will start to occur. Patting dry your wet vegetables like potatoes or adding a dry coating like flour or cornstarch to chicken works well for better browning. Number two, do not crowd the food, and I cannot stress this enough. Since the water needs to evaporate, the more space between the food, the more space the water has to evaporate, and the faster it will do so. If the food is crowded, the temperature will stay lower for longer or may not brown at all. These guidelines were held consistent for all of our tests. We made to ensure ample space was between the food that we were cooking and that all the surfaces were dry as possible. Let's look to answer that first question with experiment number one. Since an air fryer is smaller and has less space to heat up, you would assume that it does so much quicker than a convection oven. However, the convection oven could have a more powerful fan, so we need to put it to the test. As far as preheating goes, it took the convection oven 12 minutes and 45 seconds to preheat from 0 to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. In the air fryer's case, most recipes will not have you even preheat the air fryer before you put your food in. However, in our case, we thought it was best to let that come to temperature at least 3 to 5 minutes before adding in the raw food. First, let's discuss the time-controlled test. We took the chicken bites, vegetables, and potato wedges and prepared them the exact same way, roughly the same size. We raised the temperature to 400 degrees Fahrenheit and cooked them the exact same times. 12 minutes for the chicken, 10 minutes for the vegetables, and 25 total minutes with a flip for the potatoes. We pulled each one out and performed our texture tests of touch, mouthfeel, and visual, and here are the results. As you can see, after 12 minutes, the chicken bites were noticeably crisper than its air fryer counterparts after the same 12 minutes. For the roasted vegetables, it was hard to tell the difference, but overall the air fryer turned out a more crisp vegetable. Lastly, the potato wedges were essentially the same in terms of crispness. From this, there was a noticeable difference in the chicken bites, but everything else fared the same. Now, instead of controlling the time, let's look at the doneness results. For this test, we pulled the food when it reached our desired doneness. When controlling for this, the chicken bites, the roasted vegetables, and the potato wedges were all really close in terms of crispness. It was really hard to discern the difference between them. The roasted vegetables, though, were the biggest one where we could tell a difference, but again, not by much. Based on our results, we find that whether controlling for time or doneness, a convection oven and an air fryer will produce about the same levels of crispness. Based on these results, you may conclude that you shouldn't buy an air fryer, but before I talk on that, let's revisit something first. So with the experiments done and the results tallied, let's go back and look at those questions we wanted to answer. Number 1, does an air fryer cook food faster than a convection oven? Based on our results, an air fryer does not cook food faster than a convection oven. When food was cooked at the same temperature and time, the crispiness was essentially the same, and in some cases like the chicken bites, it was actually slightly more crispy. If factoring in the preheating time, you will have other things to do for around 10 minutes, but for as far as when the food is in the oven, one does not cook faster than the other. Number 2, does an air fryer make crispier food than a convection oven? Again, based on the results, an air fryer does not make crispier food than a convection oven. When the food was cooked to the preferred doneness, it was very hard to differentiate between the two. Both the convection oven and the air fryer made food that was plenty crispy. Now that we've answered those two questions, should you consider buying an air fryer for your home kitchen? Let's list out some pros and cons. For the pros, it's an alternative for a convection oven. It uses less energy than the convection oven, and it also has less preheating time. Additionally, I would argue that it's easier to clean. As for cons, it's an extra appliance that you have to store, and it can be expensive depending on the model you choose, and you can also are limited into small quantities of food that you can cook. Personally, I don't feel the need to purchase an air fryer because if I want crispy food, I have no problem deep frying it or achieving those results in the convection oven. I also prefer the option of being able to cook larger quantities of food in the oven. That being said, an air fryer could be great if you don't have a convection oven. Maybe you cook for 1 to 2 people and actually having that smaller quantities is actually a benefit to you, and the speedy preheating time means you can do some other things around the house that you've been meaning to get done. So even though I will not be purchasing an air fryer, if it helps get more people in the kitchen and excited about cooking, that is an appliance that I can support. It's safe to say that there's much worse kitchen tools out there.